This episode is brought to you by Brilliant. Click the link in the description below. I've been exploring different types of clean energy generation and storage in my videos over the past few months. And a topic that has been mentioned a lot in the comments is thorium reactors. Thorium is often held up as one of the best paths forward for achieving a mix of cheap and clean energy generation for our grid. Even former presidential candidate Andrew Yang was pushing for thorium reactors along with wind and solar. So what is it? Why are there so many people excited about it? And is it really the future of clean energy? I'm Matt Ferrell. Welcome to Undecided. In recent years, we've seen a huge increase in the amount of solar and wind power being added to the grid, which are often viewed as the ultimate clean energy power sources. And there's a growing movement to provide better grid-scale energy storage options to capture that energy generation for use at times when they may not be producing enough energy. But some argue that that's not going to be enough, so nuclear needs to be part of the clean energy mix. And it's probably a good idea to quickly go over what nuclear energy is, but just like I said in my fusion energy video, I'm going to keep this higher level because nuclear physics is clearly a very complex topic that's out of scope for this video. And it hurts my brain just a little bit. As always, I'll include a link in the description to my research if you're interested, but here's how it works at a high level. All fission-based reactors use the same exact process. It's the result of an extra neutron slamming into a larger nuclide, which splits into two smaller nuclide. The splitting of the nuclide releases a massive amount of energy and produces more loose neutrons. And those neutrons can start a chain reaction by slamming into more nuclides to continue the process. It's a nuclear chain reaction, and that reaction generates heat. Nuclear reactors can then capture that heat to turn water into steam, which then turns a turbine to produce electricity, all without producing carbon emissions associated with climate change. But many today are scared off of nuclear energy because of disasters like 3 Mile Island, Chernobyl, and Fukushima, all of which came down to a failure in the cooling systems. Uranium-235 is the common fuel source used today, and an out-of-control chain reaction can cause a catastrophic meltdown. And it's this fear around meltdowns that's holding back public interest in increasing the number of nuclear power plants. But what if there was a nuclear reactor that still had no carbon emissions, produces nuclear waste with dramatically shorter half-life, a fuel source that's 3 times as plentiful, and how about no risk of meltdown? Enter thorium. So where and why does thorium come into this? Thorium is one of the 15 heavy metallic radioactive elements in the bottom of the periodic table. It goes back to Swedish chemist Jöns Jacob Berzelius, who first isolated thorium in 1828. But it wasn't until 1898 that Gerhard Schmidt and Marie Curie separately identified thorium's radioactive nature. Thorium-232 is the most stable of the 27 thorium isotopes, which can be found in the minerals thorionite and monazite. For commercial purposes, thorium is most often found in monazite mining and is fairly abundant worldwide. The countries with the highest estimated deposits are India, Brazil, Australia, and the United States. So what sets it apart from uranium-235 that's used in nuclear reactors today? Well, uranium-235 is used because it's highly fissile. The neutron speeds can be controlled and slowed by using water as a coolant and regulator, which increases the number of uranium-235 nuclides that split. Most uranium ore that we mine is uranium-238 and only contains about 3 to 5% of uranium-235. When uranium-238 absorbs an extra neutron, it turns into uranium-239 and then quickly into plutonium, the material that we use for nuclear weapons. The spent uranium-235 from a nuclear reactor contains very radioactive isotopes with a half-life of thousands of years. So waste has to be stored safely for up to 10,000 years. And with today's reactor designs, which in the US are fairly outdated, small disruptions in the process can lead to catastrophic overheating and meltdowns. Thorium, on the other hand, isn't fissile, which means it's not a good source for a fission reaction. While it's not directly usable in a fission reactor, when it absorbs a neutron, it decays into protactinium. Then it can be chemically separated into uranium-233, which in turn can be used in a reactor and is very efficient for fission reactions. Thorium is able to breed uranium-233. It's that ability to separate uranium-233 from thorium that sets it apart from uranium-235 and 238. That's a lot of numbers. We end up with a vast amount of waste from today's reactors that needs to be stored safely. The waste from a thorium reactor is radioactive for about 500 years compared to up to 10,000. All of this is what makes thorium a unique option for nuclear fuel, because it's more abundant than uranium, can be turned into a usable fuel, and dramatically reduces the amount of nuclear waste. There's no shortage of reactor designs and concepts that can take advantage of thorium as a fuel source. Some of the reactor types you'll find are heavy water reactors, high-temperature gas-cooled reactors, boiling water reactors, pressure water reactors, fast neutron reactors, and accelerator-driven reactors. And that's still not all of them. But you can really narrow it down to two major categories of reactor designs leading the way. There's water or thermal reactors, and molten salt reactors. Probably the reactor that's getting the most focus are molten salt reactors like the liquid fluoride thorium reactor, or LIFTR based on the acronym, which uses thorium fluoride in a salt mixture that's melted into a liquid. This is often referred to as a breeder reactor design. Thorium goes in, fission products like uranium-233 come out. It's the liquid nature of the fuel that makes this type of thorium reactor special. It's both the coolant and the fuel, so it can self-regulate the process to keep the temperature from getting out of control. The simplest way to describe the how and why is that the liquid fuel is run through a reactor chamber filled with graphite rods. These graphite rods are acting as a fission moderator because they're slowing down the speed of the neutrons, much like water does in today's reactors, which increases the probability of fission reaction. Remove the graphite rods from the equation and the fission chain reaction stops. This is the biggest safety benefit over traditional nuclear reactors that we have in use today. Thorium-based reactors are safer because the reaction can easily be stopped and they don't operate under extreme pressure. In the event of a catastrophic incident in a liquid fluoride thorium reactor, it will automatically drain the liquid fuel into a tank away from the graphite, stopping the reaction. There's essentially a walk-away safety factor to thorium reactors like this. So why aren't we seeing thorium reactors everywhere? In fact, why aren't we seeing any thorium reactors in commercial use at all? There's varying levels of interest and investment in thorium reactors around the world. While the principles have been understood for a long time, there are still a lot of technical and practical challenges to overcome, like finding materials that can contain the corrosive molten salts. Lin-Wen Hu from MIT's Nuclear Reactor Laboratory said in a Wired interview, "There is still a lot of work to be done in terms of demonstrating molten salt reactor technology, even for uranium-based reactors. Molten salt reactors need to be demonstrated with a uranium fuel cycle before the system can be used for a thorium fuel cycle. Moving toward a thorium fuel cycle has a lot of unknowns." Countries like the US haven't viewed thorium as a leading candidate for nuclear power historically, so there hasn't been a lot of funding towards the research. And looking at the history as to why the US settled on uranium as a fuel source instead of thorium goes back to the Cold War with the Soviet Union. As I mentioned before, uranium-fueled reactors produce plutonium, which can be refined into weapons-grade materials, which is used in nuclear bombs. So the path the US ended up going down has been set for a very long time now, and shifting from a uranium-based infrastructure to a thorium-based one will take time. But countries like China and India that don't have a long-standing uranium infrastructure have been investing heavily into thorium. In 2009, China demonstrated the potential of thorium-based fuels and has the first high-temperature experimental fluoride salt loop in operation. India has one of the largest thorium reserves in the world and has a 3-stage plan that focuses on reaching thorium reliance by the 3rd stage. It's about countries establishing self-reliant forms of clean energy generation to support massive populations. Solar and wind alone won't be able to support the rapidly growing baseline energy needs, which is why they're investing so heavily into next-gen nuclear reactors and thorium. Now, while countries like the US have been lagging behind on thorium research compared to others, there's still interest. During his presidential run, Andrew Yang made the case to invest $50 billion in the development of molten salt nuclear reactors, wanting to get them online by 2027. And Bill Gates has been investing heavily into next-gen nuclear. He invested in TerraPower in 2011, which is working on a next-gen nuclear reactor called a traveling wave reactor. The biggest game changer for this reactor is the ability to use fuel efficiently without uranium enrichment. So it can use depleted uranium or nuclear waste as a fuel source. We'd be able to reuse that waste we're storing for 10,000 years. And the design could also work for thorium. Sadly, the test facility they were building in China has been put on hold. The Trump administration has put a lock on the potential for the Gates Foundation to keep nurturing China's nuclear innovations. But Bill Gates remains convinced that nuclear energy is our single greatest weapon to combat climate change in the immediate future and requires significant investment into new designs. And while not directly related to thorium, in May of 2020, the US Department of Energy just started a new project called the Advanced Reactor Demonstration Program, which is funding $230 million into next-gen nuclear. There's worldwide recognition that while solar and wind are great and viable sources for clean energy, by itself they aren't enough to get us to 100% clean grid quickly. A mix of solar, wind, energy storage, and nuclear can help the world achieve that goal. There's a lot of exciting potential around thorium, It's going to be interesting to watch how this evolves over the coming years. If you're like me and enjoy puzzling through how all of this comes together, and maybe you even want to get into researching and building future nuclear systems, today's sponsor, Brilliant, can help you with that. In high school, I struggled with algebra and calculus, but I've been taking the Calculus in a Nutshell course, which does a great job giving you a high-level overview for all the major pillars of calculus. I really wish I had something like this back in high school. And it's not just calculus. Brilliant has over 60 courses including topics in mathematics, science, and computer science. So whether you're a professional looking to keep up with the latest topics and learn new skills, or someone who just enjoys learning and trying to understand how the world works, Brilliant is for you. And what makes Brilliant so great is that it breaks down complex concepts into digestible, bite-sized chunks. Learn through doing with fun and interactive puzzles. It's not about memorizing formulas, it's about understanding the concepts and applying them. To learn more, go to brilliant.org/undecided where you can sign up for free. And also the first 200 people will also get 20% off their annual premium membership. Thanks to Brilliant and to all of you for supporting the channel. Now jump into the comments and let me know what you think about thorium and nuclear as part of the grid. And as always, a special thank you to all of my patrons for your continued support. It really means a lot. If you like this video, be sure to check out one of the videos I have linked to right here. Be sure to subscribe if you think I've earned it. And as always, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.